Hi, everybody. Mitch Tannenbaum here. Thanks for joining me today for the Security News Update. In the Security and Privacy Alerts Department, the White House has instructed agencies as they fire people right and left not to fire their cybersecurity staff. Um, they claim that that is a national security issue, which is certainly true. I can't argue with that. But I think the bigger issue is, one of the things we've seen in this pell-mell attempt to fire people is that they come back and realize, oh, that was a mistake, and they rehire them back. Well, in the case of cybersecurity folks, that's probably not going to happen. If they fire, decent cybersecurity folks, they'll have multiple job offers the next morning, and they're highly unlikely to come back. So they said, please don't fire your cybersecurity folks. Or, you know, and of course, China and North Korea are hoping that the agencies don't listen to the White House and fire them right and left, and the end result will be that we'll be less secure, and the Chinese and North Koreans and Russians and whoever else wants to attack us will be in better shape, less likely to get caught, less likely to get stopped. In the alerts department, we have Amazon making a change to Alexa. There used to be a private mode which allowed you to process the Alexa commands locally. As of March 28th, that is going away. That is because, and this is my interpretation, they put the slowest and cheapest chips possible in Alexa to save money. Not necessarily to save money for you, but to save money for them. And it doesn't have enough horsepower anymore to do the AI processing. Plus, they don't really have any inclination. There's certainly no requirement to let you do voice processing locally. And, if they send all the voice data back to the mothership, then they have more data to train their AI on. And of course, they can probably, however that works out, sell your data. So in any case, as of the 28th, no more ability to process Alexa commands locally. And this falls into the what could possibly go wrong department. There are startups that are using AI to write 95% of their code. Part of the problem is they don't have enough testing teams to test all of this code. And I think, the risk goes up. One of the examples of what they're doing is the current batch of folks at Y Combinator, the well-known Silicon Valley startup accelerator, and apparently a quarter of this year's startup batch have 95% of their code bases generated by AI. I mean, it could be perfect AI or perfect code. Not counting on that, but we already know that the Russians have figured out how to salt the large language models with their propaganda. It probably wouldn't take very much to salt those same large language models with bad code with bugs in it. And so if you're doing it, you really need to kind of shift that whole model of how you're doing testing. And it may well be that in a place like Y Combinator, where they're really watching what's going on very, very closely, it's possible they may have that handled. But will you have it handled? Well, I don't know. American Megatrends, they're one of the big motherboard makers used by a lot of PC makers. And they have what's called a baseboard management controller built in, which is kind of used for lights out processing in data centers and such. There is apparently a vulnerability which is rated 10 out of 10. And my guess is if you could figure out a way to rate something 11 out of 10, this would qualify, because the attack is both low complexity and does not require any authentication. So other than that, it's really hard to do. And it can be done remotely. So, and the end result, nicely, because, and it depends what they want to do, but if they're just trying to cause pain and damage, they can turn your server into a brick or doorstop, whichever term you prefer. Because if the bias is gone, then there's no way to get at the server. There are tens of thousands of servers which are immediately vulnerable to this attack, and millions of servers that are one step away from this attack. So, if you have an AMI motherboard in your server, now would be a great time to look for patches from whoever sold that to you. In the CMMC department, again, I'll just, as I always do, just focus on one item, and that is CMMC reciprocity with other countries. And this is probably more important to larger CMMC suppliers, but may apply to others. Other countries have their own version of CMMC. Canada being the most recent one in the news. They've published their CPCSC, which is their version of CSC. There are some very notable differences between what Canada is doing and what the United States is doing, but on top of that, there is no reciprocity, and given the trade tensions between the two countries at this point, I would anticipate during this administration there will be no reciprocity. So what that means is that if you're a defense contractor and you sell to both American and Canadian companies, you have two choices: either give up one of those and don't sell to that country, or run two parallel CMMC programs, because they are not compatible and there is no reciprocity. Now, there's something the DoD can do. I'm not counting on them doing it, but there is some way they could reduce the pain. In the reference department, as I reported last week, the president signed an executive order that is designed to shift the cost and responsibility for many forms of disasters, including cyber disasters, to the states. This obviously affects both red and blue states, but in particular, red states like Florida and Texas depend the most on federal disaster dollars, in part because they have a lot of disasters. And a lot of those disasters, of course, are natural disasters, but some of them are cyber disasters. Now, in the past, those states have gotten tens of billions of dollars in federal disaster aid. If that goes away, will those governors just kind of sit by and ignore the fact that they're losing out on tens of billions of dollars? I guess it's possible. Not counting on that. And that's especially true at a time when state budgets are thin. Plus, the states really don't have the expertise, the skill that the feds do from a cyber standpoint, especially if you have to basically replicate everything 51, or if you count the possessions like Guam and Puerto Rico and stuff, something like 55 times. So rather than having one federal agency doing it once, you have 55 state agencies butchering an attempt at doing it 55 times. Doesn't seem like a way to save money. It may help the feds, but in protecting the country doesn't seem like it's a great idea. In the important patches department, Veeam patches a vulnerability. Now, it's not as good as that 10 I just read you, but it's a 9.9, so it's pretty damn close. It's a remote code execution. It affects all supported versions of backup and replication systems. But the one key caveat is the system is not domain joined, then it doesn't is not vulnerable to it. So, and even though domain joining your backup server is not a great idea, they think that it's a pretty common practice. So, and they're not giving a lot of details how the attack works until people have a chance to patch it. In the legislation and legal department, the appeals court has upheld the conviction of former Uber cyber executive Joe Sullivan. Remember, he got probation and a slap on the wrist. The judge said basically, this is the first time he's seen this, so he's going to be a little bit lenient, but don't count on this happening again. His problem, remember, like a lot of cyber attacks or a lot of prosecutions in general, is not that that they got compromised, but that he lied about it to the FBI. It's in the education department. There is no honor among thieves. The Black Basta ransomware group leaks juicy data about their ties to the Kremlin. About 200,000 internal messages were shared on Telegram. It is believed that this is payback for them targeting assets of Russian interest because they're greedy. It does reveal a wealth of information, including information about their chief, the head of the gang, their ties to Putin, they call number one, and their use of AI, because AI is cool. It's always good to understand how the bad guys operate. In the cyber breaches, I titled this one, I'm glad that cyber criminals don't understand IRL in real life. The U.S. has convinced Israel to extradite a 51-year-old dual Russian-Israeli national who, for the last 5 years, was the Russian driving force behind the Lockbit ransomware gang that hacked like 2,500 systems in 120 countries. And I think in this particular case, dual national or not, if you're engaged in high-profile hacking, you should not visit countries that are friendly to the U.S. It's just not a smart thing to do. In the China department, it's always fun to beat up China. And I don't know exactly how you pronounce this. The Chinese retailer Pinduoduo, which is owned by PDD Holdings and based in Shanghai, has been hacked. They stole data on about 700 million customers, including names, addresses, phone numbers, order information, all kinds of prices, what they purchased. Now, from a privacy standpoint, nobody likes that stuff floating around. But in terms of targeting phishing campaigns, that's some primo information. Do you call it a breach if the people who own the data don't bother to even put a password on it? Another AWS bucket left unprotected with over 300,000 sensitive data. This time, those documents include things like Medicare applications. So in addition to all the normal names, address, phone numbers, all that stuff, it also includes signatures, health information, and financial information. This would get these guys in big trouble, I think. There's Oberlin marketing, so we'll see what they do. But not good for them. And lastly, in the breach department, the European telecommunications carrier Orange, which is one of the big carriers, kind of like on the scale of Verizon or AT&T here. The hackers claim that they got terabytes of emails and customer records and source codes and all kinds of stuff. Orange is, we're looking into that. We'll let you know. So I'm kind of betting on the hackers this time, but we'll see. And then in the daily news, this one is pretty cool. I don't think this would work here in the United States, but apparently it works in Australia. In Australia, they just passed a law that says that banks and social media companies and telecom carriers can be fined up to $50 million for not stopping scams. So, in the United States, we blame the social media companies in particular for not doing enough. Well, this is one way to do this. If you can get fined $50 million every time you don't stop a scam campaign, that gets pretty expensive pretty quickly. So we're already seeing that some of the Australian companies are making changes to deter the hackers. The Russian propaganda machine is infecting the AI chatbot. So how are they doing that? Well, they, originally years ago, like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, they tried to break into things like election systems. Well, they discovered that was actually hard to do. So then in the last, 5 years, they started disinformation campaigns. Well, we'll send out bogus information and some people will believe it. Well, now what they figured out is since these AI chatbots are so hungry for information to ingest, they'll ingest damn near anything. Well, what if the Russians create, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of bogus things for the chat bots to ingest, whether it's websites or blogs or whatever it is. What you're going to do is pollute the data in the chat bot, and apparently that is already working. So we're really sad. You can't believe what you get out of AI. Well, it looks like that's becoming like even more true. And as I said earlier, the president has told the states you're on your own for cybersecurity. There is a national resilience strategy, which is supposed to be released in 90 days. So we'll learn more from that once it's released. But so far, he hasn't talked about anything about, giving the states the billions of dollars that they've gotten from the feds in the past. So I think, it's going to be interesting. I think, both cyber and natural disasters are a big problem, but we will see what happens out of this national resilience strategy thing. But I think money is going to be the key thing. because I'm sure from the state standpoint, they would love it if the Fed just gave them a unlimited or unconstrained bucket of money, and they could do with whatever they want with it. That would be, I'm sure they would think that is pretty damn cool. On the other hand, are the Feds really willing to do that? I don't know. And they haven't said anything about doing that. And in the security news bites for the week, um, humans really are the weak link in cybersecurity. We keep going over and over. This is another example of that. Um, the FCC, CISA was forced to disband all of their committees that they had of experts. So now the FCC is firing up a cybersecurity committee. Don't know what its composition is. They haven't said, but they're going to pretend that they're the cybersecurity experts. Not clear that's a great strategy, but we shall see. France is debating whether they should require encryption backdoors. And the hackers are going after big law again, stealing millions of socials and other information. If I were a hacker, going after these law firms seems like a pretty good strategy because you get a lot of pretty juicy information there. And finally, the federal lawmakers are going after DeepSeek, the Chinese AI tool, one of the many, and they want to ban them on federal devices, which is within their purview. We'll see whether they're successful at it. They've been trying to ban TikTok. That hasn't worked so well. So we'll just see what happens with this one. So with that, that's all I have for today. If you have questions, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you. Otherwise, until next time, stay safe. Thanks for listening.